listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast with your host, Andy Plymer. Bringing you up-to-date coaching concepts from the world of rugby. Sharing ideas to make the game better.
Okay, welcome to episode number 62 of the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. I'm your host, Andy Plymer, and joining me today is Chris Silverthorn. Chris is the head coach of the Ontario Blues in Canada and has held that position for 8 years now. He is also the head coach of one of Major League Rugby's newest franchises, the Ontario Arrows. Along with these roles, he has been involved with the Canadian senior men's team, Canada A, Canada U17 and U19, as well as some age grade representative coaching in Ontario. It's a pleasure to have him on the show, so welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, no worries. So what's a bit of your backstory about how you got into rugby initially?
I think like most Canadians, I didn't get exposed to rugby till high school.
Yeah.
We had a new teacher just joined named Bentley Larson, who just graduated from McMaster University. He was a center for Ontario, and he kind of brought the rugby to my high school.
Yeah, cool.
And I actually didn't play in grade 9 because I thought it was crazy. Played football and basketball, everything else, and hockey, and did. But then grade 10, he got me out, and I fell in love with it ever since. So,
yeah,
and that's kind of just kept playing it, and then I got fortunate enough in my grade 11 year to play for Ontario U17, and then that kicked off that whole rep rugby. So it was good.
Yeah, and like you say, it is a common story, in Canada that most kids. I remember one year in my high school, we had some grade 7 kids come through, and 3 had already played rugby, and it was like everyone was pretty blown away by that. But usually you're getting, even with my high school team, the senior team, you're getting guys who, a third of your team have never actually played before. And obviously one of the challenges that we face in Canada.
Yeah, totally. One of my first coaching jobs, I coached the college team in Lindsay. Suzanne Fleming College is not a very dominant rugby program. So I go to the meeting the very first day of the kind of the organization of it, and there was 35 kids in the room, and 1 kid had played rugby. This is at college, so yeah. But we did win 2 games that year, so it was a success. So
yeah, and it's great. They probably
wasn't too bad.
Bunch of guys got hooked on it, and probably kept playing afterwards. And so yeah. It just what you define success as is pretty fluid in those situations.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And what about coaching? How did you originally get into coaching, and what did some of your earlier kind of experiences look like?
You know what? I got in, fortunately, because of health reasons. I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis at the age of 19.
Okay.
So I just finished playing for Ontario U19s and was longlisted for Canada U19s, and then came home that year, and I actually was going to go to Concordia University to play football.
Right.
And saw something wasn't right and went to the doctors, and sure enough, I had rheumatoid arthritis. So that kind of ended my playing career for football and rugby. Mm. And my club, Lindsay, had been so supportive of me and just helped me out all the way. I felt guilty. I kind of just like, these guys had invested a lot into me, and guys had given me money to go away to travel. And so I just got into helping the club and started teaching. And then about 19 years ago, I became the first YDO for Rugby Ontario, which was a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I did that for about three or 4 years. And then about 2 years after that, I got named assistant coach with Paul Connolly for the Ontario U18s. Right. So that's kind of where we are. So that's kind of how I got started.
Yeah. And what about some of those first sessions? What were some of the big learnings that you took away from those experiences?
Well, actually, I learned so much from Paul Connolly, just his energy and his organization and how he did things, and his focus on skill, and just the energy he brought to it was just, and I just kind of stuck with him for the longest time, just learning so much, and on just basic general rugby kind of knowledge and on attack and defense. Because I was, as a player, you kind of just focus on what you're focused on. I didn't see big picture, and it really helped me see big picture stuff. So obviously, my first, I was a forwards guy, so kind of really focused on the forwards elements and ball carrying and on how to ruck and ball presentation, that kind of stuff was my first kind of focus. What he had me work on, which I did, I really kind of dug into that area, and then kind of expanded to the lineouts and mauls and a bit of scrummaging and that kind of stuff. But it was pretty grassroots and basic when I was first started coaching. So I'm sure I made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, no, we all did for sure. And I've met Paul a bunch of times, and definitely enthusiasm is something he doesn't lack.
No,
it must be pretty infectious being around him coaching.
Yeah, definitely. We spent over 10 years together.
Yeah,
he would bring me in, and I'd bring him into something. We just kind of worked together for the longest time and really played off each other. And I really learned a lot off him.
Yeah, great, awesome,
it was fantastic. So
yeah. All right, and so you're, like I said in the intro, you're the head coach of the Ontario Blues, a dominant program in the Canadian Regional Championship or Canadian Rugby Championship. It's been running since 2009, and for listeners outside of Canada, there's 4 regions who compete for the MacTier Cup. What's a bit of a summary for that? Like you've been in there probably the longest as any coach. What's a bit of a summary of the tournament and how has it evolved over the years?
I actually started in year 2. I missed the first year. I wasn't part of the staff. Les Gilson was the head coach.
Okay.
And he brought me in as a forwards coach on year 2. And so I kind of joined it that way, and it was a pretty senior group. Les was around for 1 year, and a guy named Rob Doyle, he became the head coach in year 3. I was the forwards coach with him, and then Rob left to go down to the States with his wife for their job. And then I took over the head coaching job. But the CRC really started out under Crowley when he was the head coach. Just it was too big of a gap. They did an assessment. It was just too big of a gap between club rugby and international rugby. So this is what they created, was the CRC, breaking it off into 4 teams to compete. And it's seen many looks over the years. That's been one of the issues with it. Is it's always changing. And I'm not sure for the better sometimes. It's just kind of because of the size of the country and the cost of travel, it's been a really hard struggle to keep this thing going. But the rugby's been good. The players, they all played it and have really enjoyed it. And they always say, we just want more games. And that's where we need to get to. We just need more games of that caliber. Because when you have the top 100 play every weekend, it can only get better for the country. And that's what we're lacking is getting the best games possible for these guys.
Yeah, like I was going to jump into that a little later, but while we're on it, so you've been around it for as long as anyone. What do you think in terms of developing national players? Obviously, more exposure to high quality games is clearly what we need in Canada. Do you see any kind of windows of opportunity there that maybe we're not tapping into that we could be to expand our players' experience to those tough matches before they get right into the heat of battle for national representation?
Yeah, I think we need to kind of really focus on that group that's missing. So if you look at the group that's missing, for me, for my background experience, we're missing that kind of all the players that graduate from the U20 program from Canada don't always make it to the CRC. And we've got to see 80-90% of that level. It's got to bridge over to the senior level, and we're missing that group. So the CRC needs to become that pathway into that. So those players can't disappear. Yeah. Some of them will through injuries and wherever else, but we need to see a greater success rate from the players that graduate from the U20 Canada program into a senior representative level of the CRC. Then hopefully from there they emerge. Just too many times we're relying on older players and not giving these young guys a chance, and they need to play. So that's for me, that's one of the biggest things I see that we need. And we've in Ontario really have pushed that. We've had some players like Brett Bukaboom, Taylor Paris, Andrew Ferguson, Lucas Rumble, Tyler Ardrum, Mitch Richardson, Matt Tierney, Will Kelly have all jumped right from U20s into the Blues and played. So that's been a real goal. Maybe they weren't ready, but we made sure that they were surrounded by the right players so they could succeed. So that was one of the things that I really focused on, and we as the staff focused on, was making sure that these talented kids were given that opportunity to play and not kind of pushed aside to the bench and didn't play. So that was big for us.
So are you thinking a second tournament for under 23, or are you saying there should be a cap on those kind of players?
I think the CRC in the future will need to go to a fully under 23.
Yeah.
With the foundation of the Arrows now and that level, I think we need to focus on the under 23 level for Canada and turn the CRC into an under 23 level, with maybe an exception with Type 5. With some props and some locks that might need a bit more maturing. which would be okay.
Yeah.
But I think basically from the tight five back, they should be under 23s and just let them play.
Yeah.
And really, I think give them the coaching and put them in an environment. It's one of the things with the Blues, why we've been successful, is we've actually tried to run a fulsome program. We've played more games than anyone combined. We've had a 4 or 5 game preseason every year, where it's been we've been to South America. We've been all over the States playing. If there's a game, we'll go there and play it. And, hats off to Mark Winokur and Rugby Ontario board for trying to scrape through the money to get to run this program. But that's been one of the successes and why our players aren't necessarily better. We've had more experience and been in a program where they could develop and play that better rugby. So
yeah, it makes such a huge difference. And yeah, I'll just backtrack again to the CRC U23. I think my personal opinion is I think the hanging fruit of Canadian rugby is the universities, and I could see that U23 evolution fit really nicely into university rugby. Which, let's be honest, like there's a couple of hundred men, a couple of hundred women playing rugby over Canada in university setups where they're getting good strength and conditioning, they're getting good coaching. They're a group they're there for 3-4 years, and to link that, I think, with a U23 CRC model would be ideal. Do you see collaboration with the two being a good idea?
Oh, absolutely. I think you hit it right on. I think right now the university is probably the closest we have to a professional academy environment.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of the karting program, which is the best 20 players or whatever it is out there now, 30, which is great. But we need that 100 underneath or 200 bubbling and developing. I think we just need, the biggest thing I think is just the standard of coaching at university needs to be a bit more consistent and really run that fulsome program that some are running. UBC, UVic, Queens, Guelph, Mac, Concordia are starting to just show some real development in the future, which is fantastic. We need more of that. I know in Ontario, just speaking from Ontario's perspective, I think we'd like to see the 6 top program. We can get 6 teams firing at a real development level. Then you'll see some real growth.
All right, cool. Well, you mentioned some of the recipes for success of Ontario was the extended preseason that you have, getting those games under the belt, getting exposed to quality opposition before the actual tournament starts. What do you think of some of the other reasons? Like Ontario has won 6 championships out of the since 2009, easily the most successful team in the CRC. What are some of the other reasons behind that success, do you feel?
So the first thing has been the culture. The guys want to be there.
Yeah.
And it's not just they're just not there to be there. They're there because they want to be there and they want to be better. They want to make everyone else better. And we had the right mix. We had the right mix of the young guys that I mentioned before with some of the older guys like Derek Daypuck and the Pletch brothers, Scotty Dunham, Dougie Woolridge. All those guys really let us, as a staff, really create that culture of just, you need to work your rear end off to be here. And every practice, we needed to push each other and just as most of the guys would tell you, they just loved going to Blues practice because they didn't get that anywhere else. They didn't get that structure at club where it was competitive and they could really push each other to be better. So, I mean, we think a guy like Alistair Clark really developed the system. Dan Moore was with us for 3 years before he even saw a game. He just was as raw talent as could be, and now he's got a pro contract in England, and that has been capped. But him, 3 years, he was 3 years just to practice and just working his rear end off, being at the gym, and taking advantage of everything he can in development. And he just leaps and bounds from where he started from. So that's where we really have been successful.
Awesome. And, the club rugby scene's very strong looking across the country of Canada. Ontario Club Rugby and BC Rugby is the strongest 2 provinces. There must be some good relationships there between the Blues and local clubs as well.
It is, but it gets in kind of waves. Sometimes they're not happy with us. Sometimes they are happy with us. It's just obviously, there's some definite issues there with ownership kind of thing. Like, well, they want their players to play on Saturday, and they're not wrong.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you got to ask the player where he wants to play.
Oh, exactly.
Like we've had a saying kind of in our program with the Blues and now with the Arrows is, every player's goal is to play in the best possible game on a Saturday. Wherever that is, if we can be part of the best game on a Saturday, then we're doing right by the players.
Yeah.
And that's what the clubs kind of have been struggling to. Some clubs have been struggling to deal with that. If it is a CRC game, that's probably the best game in the country this weekend. And it's better than playing in a club game.
Yeah.
And it's just hard because the clubs, develop these guys or bring these guys in and they want to win, and they want to have fun and they want to play. But at the same time, it should be a bit of a pride thing. Like I'm from a very small club in Lindsay, and Doug Woolridge and Brett Bukaboom and Rob Brower have all kind of graduated from our program. And, but Doug hasn't played for our club in probably 15 years, like 12, 15 years. Like he hasn't played since he was probably 20 years old. But the pride in our club is that when Doug Woolridge was at the World Cup, Lindsay Rugby Club was still his club of choice that he listed, even though he's played for CEIW at West for the last numerous years. Lindsay's still his club. And that's where the pride, I think, needs to take over and be part of where you came from. So.
Yeah. Oh, mate, I couldn't agree with you more on that. Like being a club coach for a long time myself, if I lose a player for representative duties, I'm making a big announcement at practice. I'm giving him a high five and I'm saying good luck to you. And I'm also seeing a chance for a younger guy to get into first grade and to have a crack, So I think it's a mindset thing there. Like the coaches need to see that that's the net benefit of you actually losing someone over a term of, months or years. It's huge for your club. You just get another chance to develop another person. And that guy's not going to go and disappear. He's going to come back and be part of the club and be an influence around the club, like you said. I think it's win-win personally.
Like a great example here is really success breeds success. And so the Walmy Beach and in the Blues heyday, I think we won about 3 or 4 in a row there. We went on a streak of winning about 17, 18 games in a row. The one weekend we picked 7 beach guys to play one game for the Blues. And it was one of those McCormick Cup kind of quarterfinals games. And I was kind of felt guilty. I was like, oh crap, that's a lot of players, but they still won. They still won a quarter with their 7 best players playing representative rugby. Oh. I think it does. Success does breed success, and that's something the clubs need to really jump on too. That if you're producing 7 rep players for one game, that's pretty good, and you should really pat yourself on the back because you're doing something right in your club.
Yeah, good for them. That's awesome. You mentioned Lindsay there. Lindsay's one of those spots. It's a real hot spot, for Canadian players. There's a lot of national players have come out of Lindsay. What's in the water there, do you feel?
Well, it all goes back to, I don't know how familiar you are with the Jones brothers.
No.
But Vince Jones and George Jones. George, they both started the Brantford Harlequins.
Okay, yep.
Which is one of the first clubs in Ontario.
Right.
But between Vince and George, they started 10% of the rugby clubs in Ontario.
Right.
So
that's awesome.
Vince was
legends.
Vince was an OPP officer, and every time he got promoted, he got moved and started a new club.
A new club. What a legend! That's awesome.
He started a new club, and Lindsay was his last one.
Oh wow!
And his pride and joy. And then Lindsay, it became the summer thing to do. It's very much a small town in Ontario where you play hockey.
Yeah.
All winter long. You play golf in the summer. Yeah. And you also played rugby.
Oh, that's cool.
And and like little things like a Bukaboom name. Obviously, Bukaboom name is very popular in hockey, and Jeff Bukaboom, which is the uncle of Brett and Matt.
Yeah.
The family came out and said, you know what? Our kids are going to play rugby in the summer and not going to play summer hockey or lacrosse and that was big in our community. And just so, every athlete in town plays rugby, to be honest with you. There's 2 high schools, the 3 high schools now, but when I was there in the heyday, it was 2 high schools, and both high school programs were top notch. So.
It's fantastic.
And it really just, it was fantastic. It is fantastic.
That's great. All right, as I mentioned in the intro, you're the head coach of the newest MLR franchise, the Ontario Arrows. That's you guys must be fizzing about that. It's really exciting times in North American rugby, and now that there's a Canadian franchise entering next season, that's more the better. What's a bit of backstory about the franchise coming about, and the last 18 months of the prep going into the exception into MLR?
Well, it all started, to be honest with you, with one game. So with Glendale Raptors coming up to play the Blues last spring, I guess two springs ago now, and they had not lost a game in about 2 years, 2.5 years. They hadn't lost a game. And so we really hyped it. We kind of set our whole preseason around it. Went to New York before, really set that let's put ourselves against the best team in America and see what happens with this. So we had a great prep, probably the best prep my whole time that I was in the Blues. And we absolutely smashed them.
Yeah,
and we beat them, I think, by 25 points. And it was a gentleman there watching the game named Bill Webb.
Yep.
He's a Rugby Canada board member.
Yep.
Former Brantford Harlequin. And he just kind of tapped Mark Winokur in the shoulder after the game, and he said, "Is this the best that they have?" And this whole thing kind of understand the MLR thing, and he says, "Here's my number. Call me on Tuesday." And here we are now. So
that's great.
It just started. It literally started from that.
Yeah.
And it's grown. Last year we did that spring season where we did the test season, and I believe it's a total of 6 investors now. I'm not sure who all they all are. They're not really out in the public yet, but we're on the verge of announcing that we are in the MLR next year. So nothing actually is announced yet.
Okay, right.
Announced
yeah,
yet.
My apologies.
So no, it's been leaked out, but nothing like we haven't picked our staff yet. So we're not sure exactly who's going to be leading the charge. I am going to be involved. Mark Winokur is going to be involved.
Right.
But we are here, and it's going to be a real kind of function of the CRC development into this MLR team.
Yeah.
So that is the goal.
Yeah, great. Okay, so yeah, you mentioned that you've had 2 exhibition seasons so far, and prepping for like you corrected me on hopeful entry into the MLR. What's been some of the challenges over that time? Because I've when you're not a fully fledged team and you're bringing players in, there's a bit of turnover. There's a large playing group. What have been some of the challenges with that, and how have you adapted around them?
The biggest thing for us was really to take what we've the fundamental focus we've had in the Blues program and seeing if it works by adding in pieces. So the spring season was strictly research and development. We wanted to see, do we have 30 players that could play at this level? So we tried to pick as many games as we possibly can on a limited budget. Obviously, it wasn't an unlimited budget. So we needed to be kind of careful of that to have these games work to be competitive. And we were mainly Ontario, bringing in pieces here and pieces there. And with Kingsley Jones just coming into town and the involvement of the karting program again, it was kind of hard because he was trying to establish something. So we really didn't want to disrupt the players out there. We wanted to let them do things. So, which wasn't the original plan. We thought we'd be able to pick more from the whole country, but it actually worked out quite well for us to give us guys the players. And we just realized that we can compete with everything we have in the CRC. There is enough talent. And so the main focus when Bill Webb and Mark and myself sat down, that this was going to be a Canadian-focused team. This is here to turn Canadian players into professional rugby players. This isn't to bring people in from overseas to see, what kind of stars we can bring in or whatever. This really is to give the opportunity for grassroots Canadian players to play rugby at the highest level in North America. And that's really the main, that is the mission statement. That is the goal. That is the vision statement, whatever you want to call it, is really to bring professional rugby to Canadian players. So here we are.
Yeah. Well, and just doing a bit of research for this interview, I looked at, some past rosters, and that was the one thing that jumped out at me. And I love it. I think it's so important to have, that next step up from CRC for Canadian rugby, and just looking at the roster, every name had a Canadian flag except maybe 1 or 2, and I just think that's so important. And you've got to be able to build something off that in terms of defining the team and the style of play you want to put on the field for spectators, and something to be proud of. Is that a driving mechanism to the team culture as you move forward?
Oh, it has to be. Yeah, It is. It's a Canadian first policy. We need to make ourselves better, but we also need to sell ourselves. So we really hope that the whole country, and especially the people in Toronto, can support this team, come out, buy tickets, and really get behind it. Because if this doesn't succeed, I'm not sure what's next for this for our development in Canada.
Yeah.
I think we've been given an opportunity here. We need to run with it, and we have enough talent. what we have, what our advantage is over the teams in the MLR is we have a depth. We have actually a development system that is lacking for these clubs. Like even Glendale, which is probably the flagship state, we don't have that junior youth development that we do from all these, with the Ontario system at U19, U18, U17, BC, Alberta, Quebec, the Atlantic Rock regions all have that. And there's good players on every team. You don't have to be in Ontario for BC to be a good player at 18. We need to, the goal of the year is to make sure that no player gets missed at that age group, that they do get put into a system and that we can develop it. So we really need to focus on where we're going to see the next level. Because to me, for us to succeed, the players are 17 years old right now. We need to identify the top 10 players at U17 right now, the top 10 players at U18, top 10 players at U16, and put in a mechanism to let them develop and really kind of form a culture of this is where I want to play and this is where I want to be, and give them a goal. Because if there's no end goal to play pro rugby, why is anybody? It's hard to get players to play rugby if there's not that end goal. Because the modern athlete today wants success; they want to play at the highest level.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just going back on one thing you're saying there, we have the talent here. Like I've been here in Canada for 11 years, and I've been saying that from day one. Like the raw materials for good quality rugby players, they're absolutely here in Canada, and like you say, they're across the country. They're not just in Ontario and BC. And you see it as soon as you coach a bunch of Canadian kids. They come to you and they say, "Oh, when do we start hitting? When do we start tackling?" And they want that physicality, and they want to participate and perform. And I couldn't agree with you more there. And going back to what I said before about aligning it with the universities, trying to remove constraints like pay to play from age grade representative duties. Increasing coach development. They're all challenges that I think with a professional franchise involved, there's so much room for growth here.
Absolutely. And in my experience, even that too, is I was fortunate enough to select my early days of rep rugby is to coach a few of the Millfield teams. So at the age of 16, 17, our athletes were better than England and France. Yeah. We beat France by 22 points one year.
This is at the Wellington Festival, right?
Well, yeah, it was called Millfield back then.
Oh, right, okay, right.
It was Millfield back then, and it was we could physically handle, and we were better athletes than all of them because our kids played more sports. They played hockey, baseball, golf, volleyball, lacrosse. They played all these sports, and they just figured they're better athletes. Where we weren't better is 9 and 10, and they could control the game.
Yeah.
They just could control the game. And that's where we did. But we were competitive. I mean, in my years there, we beat Scotland, we beat France, we beat Wales, Romania, U.S. The only team we didn't beat was England, and we should have beat them twice. I think just poor simple mistakes have made. But we have the talent. We just need to find a way to develop it from that 17, 18 to senior men's. That's where we get lost.
Yeah, I think it's developing and capturing those athletes to. And, going back to the university thing too, making men's rugby a CIS sport or a varsity sport has to be a piece of the puzzle as well. Women's rugby is already a varsity sport, and look at what that's done to the national senior women's team. They've had great success, fourth and then second in the last two World Cups. I think having men's varsity rugby is key.
It is key, yeah, because it just captures all of the athletes and all the players, and you've got them for 4 years there. You've got them at the prime, at the free end for 4 years. They don't leave. They're right on campus.
Yeah,
it's perfect.
And I'm pretty passionate about this part. So this bit that we're talking about. So I've got a bit to say. I usually let the guests do most of the talking, but I'm just thinking about the high school that I've been at. I've been at the same school for this is my 11th year at the high school I teach at. We've had no players come out of that high school who have played in the NHL, but we've had 6 players come out of that same high school that have played age grade national rugby, and then there was one other who also played for the senior men's team.
Absolutely.
So it's there. It's like the raw materials are there, just giving them that pathway and the support to get those athletes to find their natural progression into elite sport. Some will fade off, obviously, but we're missing chunks in the pathway, and I think this is all things are pointing in a good direction right now. If we can have success in a professional level.
Oh, definitely. And listen, going back to Lindsay, there's two main high schools that play rugby in Lindsay. One high school has produced 3 professional rugby players. They have not produced a professional hockey player in that same time.
It's great, isn't it?
And we're a hockey town.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. Eh? Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, where to now for the Ontario Arrows?
We're at Halifax next weekend. We're playing the new Boston team.
Right.
I think they're called the Free Jacks. So we're going to have a team. We're going to bring in a few new players, some Atlantic Rock guys that we haven't had a chance to look at yet.
Awesome.
Bring them in, give them an opportunity to play. And it's kind of our last game before we kind of into next season where we're playing in the full league. So it's a big game for us.
Yeah.
Really giving these guys an opportunity to be there and see how they do.
Right. And will that be streamed or will it Facebook Live?
I believe it is streamed. I'm not positive on that, but I believe it will be streamed.
Okay, great.
The game's in Halifax on the 20th.
Yeah. Oh, great city for rugby too, Halifax. It's are
totally.
you at Wanderers Field?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, great. That'll be awesome. That'll be another step in the right direction. So that's exciting.
Yeah, we played Glendale a few weeks ago, and that was a success. We had that was a pretty close team that we thought was one of the better teams that we could put out from a Canadian first.
Yeah.
And I think we did quite well against a team that was probably one of the best teams in the MLR last year. They lost in the finals, but they were kind of the leader of the pack the whole year round and just fell short in the final game. But it was a pretty good test, and we put our hand up that we think we're ready. And
you've got a relationship with York University, is that right?
Yes, as of right now, that's where basically the home base is going to be.
Right.
They're building the stadium that we have there. They're going to put a new field in.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if it's going to be ready for next season, but they're working on that. So it's a great facility. And then obviously because of the time of the year, we need to find a really good dome space to practice.
Yeah.
For the winter months, because the first game is January 26th next year.
Wow,
so
really?
So we are we're going to be a full struggle to find a facility that can accommodate all our needs. From what to be ready to play a full game on January 26th.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, that's exciting times, and I can't wait to keep track of the Arrows and follow their success. So, congrats to you and all the coaches and supporters involved. I think it's really, really exciting.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So, we always end the interview with the same final 4 questions. When you were a kid growing up, introduced to rugby, who were some of the players that really stood out to you in that time?
Well, obviously, as a Canadian person, I thought Danny Baugh was phenomenal. Just the human torpedo throwing his body everywhere and just a machine. Just his intensity, just the way he played the game was fantastic. Just style for me as a Canadian was like he embodied what a Canadian rugby player should look like, and it was fantastic. But Keith Wood was my kind of hooker. He looked like he had so much fun out there playing.
Yeah.
And then watching him with the Lions years later, you're kind of like, this is the guy this is what rugby's all about.
Yeah.
It's the guy who has fun out there and is great at it. Yeah. And had all skills for all players before
changed the position.
That was even a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he changed the position, and of this is episode 61 or 62. I think anyone who's got a link to forwards, Keith Wood will often come up as one of their favourite players back in the day. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And what about now? Who are some of your favourite?
Yeah, it's got to be Kieran Reid. The guy does not make a mistake.
Yeah.
He fixes everyone else's mistakes, and obviously New Zealand is stacked, and their 1 to 15 are fantastic. But here's a guy who is the glue.
Yeah.
And he's a coach's dream, isn't he? He makes coaches better because he leads on the field, leads off the field, but it always shows up when a mistake happens to fix it. Yeah. And he's been fantastic. He's been one of my favorite players for the last few years. Watching him play, it's just like when you're watching a New Zealand game, I'm watching, looking for number 8 out there just to see where he is, because he just appears in the right spot at the right time all the time.
Yeah, he's definitely been the dominant Southern Hemisphere 8 for sure, and some would argue best in the world for the last 5 years or even more.
Yeah.
So I agree. obviously, as an Australian Wallabies fan, he's done some damage to us in numerous games. But yeah.
Well, the background story is pretty good too. Polcott's, he's right there too, though.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, totally agree. Cool. And what about coaches? Who are some of the high-profile coaches around the world that you like what they're doing?
Oh, I think look at what New Zealand does in their development process. It's just really has been phenomenal. I think when you look at the international stuff, it's just they have set the standards, and the next 5 All Blacks coaches are already lined up.
Yeah,
how they do things there is just phenomenal, and they're just so far ahead of the game and their technology and how they see it and how they're always 3 steps ahead. And that's been just really something you always want to look at and see, and as much exposure to it you can.
Yeah,
I mean, that's got to be one of the number 1 exports is rugby coaches.
Yeah, yeah, well, for sure. a lot of national coaches around the world. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. If you've landed,
yes,
landed here, that's for sure. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Cool. All right. And what about local grassroots coaches that you feel deserve a shout out for the work they're doing in your community?
Oh, I think my current assistant coaches for the Blues, Aaron Carpenter and Corey Hector. Carps obviously needs no explanations. 80 cap guy for Canada, has really embraced the whole coaching philosophy thing, and I think he's going to be definitely a keeper. And Corey Hector, who's the head coach at University of Guelph, been around the Blues program, junior Blues program for a long time, is really just switched on.
Yeah,
and just lives and breathes it. I think both of these guys, you'll see them coaching Canada at some point, if not the Arrows. And I think the Arrows will be used, and I think you'll see the next Canadian coach of the national team will come out of the Arrows, hopefully the Arrow system if everything goes right.
Yeah, hopefully so. I think it's time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've never met Aaron, but I've met Corey a few times, and he's definitely had success at Guelph. I think they won it 2 years ago, was it?
He did, yes.
Yeah. He's definitely a guy I'd love to have a chat on the pod. So cool. All right. Well, great talking to you about the Blues and the Arrows as well, which is, like I said, really exciting for players, for coaches, for fans of rugby in Canada. So I'm really looking forward to it, and just want to thank you for giving up your time for coming on the show, and all the best in the prep for the game in Nova Scotia and what's to come for the Arrows.
No problem. Thanks, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. Pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review via iTunes and keep listening for the next episode. You can also follow us via Twitter at RugbyCoachesCNR or via the website therugbycoachescorner.com. Until next time, keep sharing ideas to make the game better.